Hello everyone, I hope you guys are all having a wonderful day, and today is the fourth episode of my Kerbal Space Program Real Solar System series, where we try to recreate the history of NASA. So, after the Apollo program came the shuttle program. A very long program, 30 years or so, but yeah. So currently, this shuttle is boosting, getting into the upper atmosphere. Now that we're in it, we're going to start pitching over, trying to gain as much horizontal velocity as possible. Our boosters are losing fuel and are about to separate now. And as you can see, now we just have the external tank, which is going to be what brings us into orbit. Now, of course, the burn that most rockets do in the upper atmosphere is a very long burn, basically trying to get to the 7 kilometers per second needed to get into low Earth orbit. So that's what we're going to do. Now, this thing is pretty hard to control because the center of mass and center of thrust are just everywhere. But I was able to keep it from going out of control just long enough to get us into orbit. So now, what's interesting here is I got a component for a space station, which is what we're going to be building this episode if you saw the thumbnail. Now, I just need to do a little 10 meter per second burn to even out our orbit, and this is going to be on the Terminator, which is always a nice place to do a burn, because it's just an area that looks great. So now we're going to point prograde and just even that out manually, which is what I decided to do, because it can often be easier than trusting a maneuver node. Especially when your center of mass and the center of thrust are not even. So yeah, now I'm just going to use this Kerbal to literally push the component out. I thought that'd be funny to do. And then we're just going to leave it rotating like that, and when the next shuttle comes, it would have stopped rotating, because that's how Kerbal Space Program models physics. It does not model your rotation if you're more than 2 kilometers away. That's the physics range. But yeah, now that we've gotten enough pretty pictures of it, we are going to plan a burn to get us back to Earth. Now, this is going to be 163 meters per second, so decently sized. And there we go. So yes, I decided to land not in Florida, but in the Caribbean. I'd figure it out when I did, or I'd land on water. But shuttle re-entries are a pain in the butt. You're re-entering for a very long time. You have to make sure you don't get out of control, and it's really just a game of being very, very patient. And as you can see there, I did go out of control, and other than that, we were fine. So I wanted to land on that peninsula, but I needed to bleed off more fuel, and we actually bled off too much fuel here. You can see once we land, we basically bounce up and then slam against the ground. But a landing you can walk away from is a good landing. So let's switch over to the next launch. So, this shuttle here has actually a solar panel component, truss if you will, that is going to give it power, which is very important, because you need power, like, for anything nowadays. But yeah, we're just pitching over, aggressively pitching over once we get above 10 kilometers, and as you can see now at 30 kilometers, we're at a good 80-degree angle, and now, or 10 degrees, and now we just separate those boosters. I am not good with the separation motors. I have to basically pitch the whole thing over to keep them from slamming into the shuttle wings, but it does work, and the amount of delta V we lose is probably 100 meters per second. But this external tank is way overpowered and definitely has enough delta V to do that maneuver a couple times. And now we are just gonna burn to orbit. Yes, it's a 4 kilometer per second burn to get us up to 7 kilometers per second. And I was kind of struggling for control here, trying to keep it at that maneuver node. Actually, the reason that maneuver node is shifting right there, as you can see, is the way KSP models maneuver nodes, it assumes you're going to be going on straight on. That is, your center of thrust and center of mass are going to be perfectly aligned. But of course, with the space shuttle, that is impossible. But as you can see, I'm just shutting down the RS-25s and activating the smaller orbital maneuvering engines, and I'm just waiting for an encounter. And as you can see, they're getting closer and closer together as the orbits go on. Let's see, 400 kilometers, 200, 100, and then that right there is when you want to plan a maneuver node to get yourselves a very close encounter. Now, as you can see, it's a pretty good encounter, couple kilometers, and this is especially hard in KSP Real Solar System where you are having massive distances. But the nice thing is that these burns don't take a lot of delta V. So yeah, we're just going to warp around, then I'm going to burn retrograde to relative to my target, and then we're going to basically line up and cancel out our velocities. Now, I was actually worried I wasn't going to have enough basically fuel to actually get back, so I decided to do the rest of this with this thing's RCS thrusters. That's why I'm leaving the shuttle down there, and overshot it as I always do, but I was able to, I had enough delta V with the reaction control thrusters that I was able to just come back, turn around, get it all lined up, and then docked. Now, docking here, it's pretty self-explanatory. I'm just using the reaction control thrusters to line up myself, and this one mod called Kerbal cameras or something like that, which gives you these nice docking cameras. And yeah. So there we go. We now have the solar arrays. I'm setting the action groups so I can close them and open them by just setting a button. And yeah. Now we're just going to switch to the space shuttle and deorbit that. Now, I deorbited it way too far away from any continent, and we ended up landing in the water. Now, this is a perfect example of skipping off the atmosphere you're going to see in a second. Now, many people talk about skipping off the atmosphere in the context of the Apollo program. You can't do that. The Apollo capsule, while yes, it did lean slightly forward during re-entry, it could not truly skip off the atmosphere. It would basically go in and out. The shuttle, or any winged or any body that has a lift on it, can skip off the atmosphere. So if you look closely, we're at 77, 76, 74, 73 kilometers, and you're going to see that we're pitching up so aggressively that it's going to start bouncing us back up if you wait. So as you can see, our velocity is slowing down, and now we're going back up. That is skipping off the atmosphere right there. And really the only thing it does is slow your velocity and buy you time. It's not really a good strategy, because immediately, especially with the space shuttle, you're going to have to pitch down unless you want to lose all of your velocity, like that. So then now at 1,000 meters we're doing a very aggressive pitch up maneuver, and then we're going to try landing on water, like that. No parts were destroyed, so this is a successful landing. That's unlike the real shuttle, which if it landed on water, it would be toast. Now here I've recreated the Boeing's crewed vehicle that goes to the ISS just because I really like it. It's my favorite ISS crewed vehicle made by a company, just like mostly because it uses the Atlas V. And as you see there, check your staging so that doesn't happen. You don't flip over in flight. But yeah, now just doing 3 kilometers per second burn to get into orbit to get up to 7 kilometers per second. So what's interesting about this spacecraft actually is that the capsule sits on top of the Atlas V upper stage, or I guess Atlas II. But it's really interesting because you get this really weird place where it juts in on itself, which the aerodynamics of that must not be great. So yeah, now we're just getting our encounter. That's pretty self-explanatory. I don't think I need to spell that out. And I'm using the small vernier thrusters on that capsule to do that. Now just typical burn retrograde to our target, burn to our target, burn retrograde to our target again when we get it to another encounter that's closer, and yeah, it's just rendezvous. Yeah. And of course I overshot the target, like I always do. There. And then I was actually going to go for the one docking port, but I realized I couldn't use it. So I actually had to go and, yeah, it was a smaller docking port that I couldn't use, so I had to flip it around, hit N, hit H, and do all that stuff. And I'm surprised I actually made it, because at this point I was just exhausted. And yeah, there we go. Thank you for watching, and I hope you guys all have a wonderful day.